So in section 3.6, we talk about synthetic division, and here we just have a few problems, a few different kinds of questions, but all of which involve completing a synthetic division to answer the question. Okay. The first one, the most basic one, is if you're given a polynomial function and asked to evaluate it. Now again, clearly we could just plug in -2, probably grab our calculator and work it out to find what p of -2 is. But synthetic division usually gives us a slightly quicker way to do it. So again, remember for synthetic division, if you want to evaluate p of -2, you put -2 here, and then you put your coefficients in order. So we have 5 is our x cubed, then we have -6, we have -28, and 8. Okay, leave some space, so we have to fill in some numbers there. Okay, remember the first number always comes down, and then remember you multiply and then put your answer there. So you're kind of doing this at a diagonal. So multiply -2 times 5 to get -10. Write that here. You always add going down. Multiply -2, -16 is +32. Always add going down. -2 times +4 is -8. Add going down. Remember, we leave this one sort of off by itself. Okay. So the easiest, so to answer the question, what's p of -2? That's this part, whatever number is right here. So p of -2 is 0. Just as an aside, keep in mind then, this is not the question that's asked, but because you divided by the -2, remember you were dividing by x plus 2, and you found out, it turned out to be 5. Remember, you reduced the power by 1, x squared, minus 16x, plus 4, plus a remainder of 0. Okay, and so then clearly, when it's written like this, right, p of -2 would be 0 times something plus 0, which is why we're going to get the 0. You're always just going to get that remainder. All right, so next one, again, we have -2. Your coefficients, now again, be careful here. We have -1 for the x to the fourth. We have a 0x cubed. Then the 3x squared, -4x, and -5. Leave room. Now the first one comes straight down, and then it's multiply. Put your answer there at a diagonal. Always add coming down. Multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. And so we have a remainder of -1. Okay, so again, the quick answer is p of -2 is -1. That's all you have to do. Okay, just to double check, or to just sort of show you why, remember you did a division. So you divided out the x plus 2, remember. What are you left with? Remember, you started with the degree 4, so this would be degree 3, 2x squared minus 1x minus 2 with a remainder of -1. Okay, so notice then x plus 2 is not a factor, right, because there's a remainder. But if you want to plug in -2, right, this piece becomes 0. I'm not even going to check what that piece is, because it's going to be 0 times anything minus 1. And again, you're going to get your -1. Okay. All right, next two, you're asked, is it a 0? Well, remember, how is a number 0? Is a 0 of a function? You're asking, is p of 2 equal to 0? Okay, so again, just like the ones above it, we have to find p of 2. So again, we take our 2, our coefficients are 1, -4, 9, and -10. First one comes down, and then remember, multiply, add, multiply, add. 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, so is p of 2 0? Yep, that's what it turned out to be. So the answer here is yes, x equal to 2 is a 0. Okay, so again, we're doing the same thing, but just you have to remember what it means. What does it mean, is x equal to -2 or 0? That's the same thing as saying, is p of -2 equal to 0? Okay, so again, we just put -2 and just evaluate. We find what p of -2 is. Just fractions, we can live with that. So we have a coefficient of 3/2, coefficient of -1, coefficient of 3/2, and then don't forget there's no constant, so we have to fill in 0 there. Right? Bring down nicely when we multiply here, right? Then 2's will cancel, so you just get -3. Add, multiply, get +8. Add, that's not as nice, but remember 8 is 16/2, so 16/2 and 3/2 is 19/2. Multiply, again the 2's cancel, so that's okay. And we get -19. Okay. So is p of negative 2 equal to 0? No. P of negative 2, we found out, is negative 19. So x equal to negative 2 is not a 0 of p of x. Okay. All right, just a few more here. Now we're checking factors. So again, it's the same kind of question, okay? It's a factor if the remainder is 0, okay? It's a factor if negative 2, right, would make this a 0. So again, this is the same, similarly asking, is x equal to negative 2 as 0 of p of x, okay? Or if you want, is p of negative 2 equal to 0? So again, the same thing is find p of negative 2. Okay? So we have negative 2, our coefficients 4, 24, 48, and 32. Do our synthetic. Remainder is 0. So yes, it is a factor. We know that p of negative 2 is 0, which means x equal to negative 2 is a 0, which means x plus 2 is a factor. Okay? Similar here. Now again, just remember when you're trying to decide if x minus 1 is a factor, the question is x equal to 1 is 0? So you have to be a little bit careful about your signs. So when we set up the synthetic, you'd put a 1 out here. All my coefficients. Okay. Oh, I think I missed the 0 here. Sorry. Right, I missed my cube here. There's 0x cubed. So let me just write this again. So we have a 1, 2x to the 4th, 0x cubed, 3x squared, negative 5x, and 7. So break down, multiply, add, multiply, add. It's nice, we're always multiplying by 1. So we're left with 7. So remember, what does that mean? It means p of 1 equals 7, okay? Which means p of 1 is not 0, so it's not, x equal to 1 is not a 0, x minus 1 is not a factor. P of x. Okay. All right, and then for this last one, here I'm just saying show their zeros, so we'll work out the synthetic, and it should in fact turn out to be 0 each time for our remainder. So we have 2x cubed, 5x squared, negative 1x, negative 6. And we'll just, you can run through these and make sure that in fact you're getting 0 for remainder each time. We'll check negative 3 halves. Again, we have 2, 5, negative 1, negative 6. Be careful with your multiplication there, but most of the fractions cancel here. So again, we get 0, and then finally we test the 1 with the 2, 5, negative 1, negative 6. And get a 0. Sorry about that. So again, we have we just wanted to check that they were all zeros, and synthetic gives us that fairly quickly. Okay. Then the next one is to factor it. Okay, well again, it's much easier once we have the zeros, right? So if, remember the idea is, we just said x equal to negative 2 is a 0. So remember, that means x plus 2 is a factor. X equal to negative 3 halves is a 0. Which again means x plus 3 halves is a factor. And we had x equal to 1 was a 0, so x minus 1 is a factor. So for p of x, and we're going to have to be a little bit careful here because we're going to be careful about a coefficient, but we have our 3 factors, x plus 2, x plus 3 halves, x minus 1, okay? Now the only thing to be careful about is, clearly you see x times x times x gives you x cubed. We don't want to multiply all this out. But you can see that the leading term right now would be xxx, which is x cubed. But remember our original, if I can slide this down here a little bit, right, is 2x cubed. So you need a coefficient of 2 here. Now you can multiply it all out to make sure it's all correct, but that should work then. Okay. All right, and then solve. Well, obviously we already have the factors. We've already set it equal to 0. So -2, -3 halves, and 1. Okay. All right, and then finally this one, it says factor this cubic, but here's a hint, 1 is a 0. Okay, well remember, if 1 is a 0, we already have one of the factors. So I'm essentially telling you that x minus 1 is a factor. We just have to get the rest of it. Okay, well, we divide it out. We use synthetic. So remember, we're checking 1, or the factor x minus 1. We're told it is a 0, or x minus 1 is a factor, so we should get remainder 0, which we do. Okay, but again, remember, this is what's left over from the division. So remember, that's 2x squared, decrease the power by 1, minus 1x, minus 6. So that's what belongs here. Okay. And so then we just try to, finish factoring. Sorry. So this is now quadratic, which just makes it a little bit easier to factor. So 2x squared, we're going to need a 2x and an x. And then we need a minus 6. And I think we need a plus 3 minus 2. That should work, right? Our middle term would be plus 3x minus 4x, which is negative 1x, which is what we wanted. Okay. And so there's p of x factored completely. All right, and we do have one more. So find the zeros, again, which is essentially factoring. We have the first one given to us. So again, we take our negative 5. Our coefficients are 2, 8, negative 11, negative 5. Again, we're told it's a 0, so when we go through this, we should get remainder 0, which we do. Okay. So we've already have our first factor done, x plus 5. We're left with 2x squared minus 2x minus 1. Okay. Now, you can try to factor this, but when you do, like we factored the other one, it fails to factor. You could try the plus 1 minus 1 any way you want. It's not going to work. Okay. So how do we find the 0? Again, we already have this 0, x to be negative 5. How do we get the zeros from here? You just need the quadratic formula. Okay. And so again, when we're done here, right, our zeros, we have the zeros from the first one. The quadratic formula should give us the zeros from the second piece. Okay. So again, a is 2, b is negative 2, c is negative 1. And so x equals opposite of b, plus or minus square root b squared minus 4, the a, the c, all over 2a. And then I'll let you clean up the details there, but you should get 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, and so those would be our other two zeros, 1/2 plus root 3 over 2, 1/2 minus root 3 over 2. And again, because it's a degree 3, we would expect 3 zeros.